Nicole Mckee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to speak in support of the Anzac Day Amendment Bill. The changes that this bill makes will allow us to formally recognise more veterans who have served New Zealand, specifically in the conflicts which have occurred since 1966, which was when the Anzac Day Act was last updated. Our day of commemoration on Anzac Day currently honours the part played by New Zealand servicemen and women in 6 specified conflicts: the First and Second World Wars, the South African Boer War, the Korean War, the war in Malaya and Borneo, and also the war in South Vietnam. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pointing to the plaques on the wall which commemorate and acknowledge. The Anzac Day Amendment Bill will allow those who have served or died in other conflicts in times of war in the past, and God forbid in our future, to also be commemorated and recognised. It serves as validation for the significant personal sacrifices that they have made, including time away from home and family, enduring difficult conditions and facing both physical and emotional challenges. Being recognised for their service is a deeply meaningful acknowledgement of their dedication, sacrifice and contributions to our country. Recognition also connects their individual contributions to something much larger, a commitment to not just duty and to honour, but to also protect others. It underscores that their role was not just about the job itself, but about the greater good to society. This recognition will also be about the legacy left behind. It means that their service will be remembered for future generations and for their families, and also for the communities that have been impacted by their service. Ultimately, recognition for service is a way of us saying, your efforts matter and we really appreciate what you have done for us. It acknowledges the courage, the commitment and the sacrifices that our servicemen and women have made. Many of us, when we get up in the early hours of Anzac Day to attend a dawn service, are doing so to honour a relative who may have served. I like to reminisce and think back to what my forefathers did to ensure that we live in a free and democratic society. I only had one grandparent growing up, Mr. Speaker. It was my maternal grandfather, and he constantly talked about the war and its effect on him and his friends. The impact this had on me surfaced when I first started shooting sports. When I started with a service rifle, I picked up the trusty old 303. I've never been interested in shooting the modern service rifle. I just wanted to use the same type of rifle that my grandfather used, and I wanted to be a part of a society that respects and commemorates in that way. The Lee Enfield is a bolt-action, magazine-fed repeating rifle that served as the main firearm for the military forces of the British Empire and Commonwealth during the first half of the 20th century. It was a standard issue firearm to the British Army and other Commonwealth nations, including New Zealand and Australia in both the First and Second World Wars. When I'm at a range using a 303, I'm connected to that history, lest we forget. And how could we forget when we're standing in this chamber? Look around. We are surrounded by reminders of our military history. This place in which we stand was at one time dedicated as a memorial to the First World War. The carved circular wreaths around the balcony bear the names and places where significant battles were fought by New Zealand troops during World War I. And there are 18 carved plaques on the wall panels, which were added in 1961 and include later war service by New Zealand troops. How appropriate then, Mr. Speaker, surrounded by all of this history, that we now move to formally recognise those who have taken part in more recent warlike conflicts, including our peacekeeping forces. Mr. Speaker, it is my absolute honour to commend this bill to the House.
Can't argue with that.
Interesting hearing about the fact of only growing up with one grandparent.
Yeah.
That wasn't really... Oh, sorry, Rob, please.
No, go, Laura.
Yeah, okay. What got me is that we heard from the previous 2 speakers who kind of talked more about, the way how the Crown kind of treated veterans when they came back. Nicole didn't really address that side of things. She said, I had a grandfather, he talked about what he went through, and then I ran off to the gun range with a gun. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I kind of wish that she acknowledged. I kind of wanted to know more about what her grandfather went through and how he was treated after he came back from war. But, okay, if she wants to remember her grandfather through, 303, then rifle. Okay.
That's an interesting point, but she might watch this show and might be inspired to expand on the grandfather topic at second reading.
Maybe. I thought it was very interesting what she had to say. Yeah, and just talking about the history there in the house. This is the whole thing with Anzac and these Chunuk Baron Remembrance Day. If you don't know where you've been in history, you don't know where you are, and if you don't know where you are, you certainly don't know where you're going as a country. It's an old saying, isn't it? If you don't learn from what you've been, what New Zealanders have been doing, and at the time, it doesn't shape the future decisions very well.
Interesting about what Kiwi mentioned about grandfather being a POW. My great-grandfather, my grandma's father, was POW by Germany in World War II and was liberated by the Americans, and at the end of it got sent to the UK, and he was there for 6 months before they would allow to send him back to New Zealand. The one positive aspect that came out of that from his experience in the UK was being able to meet his cousins from Scotland. So he went up to Scotland and actually, met parts of the family he probably never ever would have met. And it's actually interesting, after World War II, he continued with logging, and was still doing axe cutting until I'm not sure if it's 70s or 80s. I'll have to even check with Grandma or with John, my cousin, who got the experience of having a great-grandparent in his life, and his children get the experience of having his grandmother as their great-grandmother in their life now, which is my grandma's two great-grandchildren, who are quite funny enough, are adults as well. It's quite scary that all my grandma's grandchildren and great-grandchildren are all adults now. It's quite interesting just like doing that. But yeah, it was interesting hearing the different parts, because the fact is John's 18 years older than me, got those different experiences. But it's, you hear all these things there. My grandma says if he wasn't a POW, he, instead of dying in his late 80s, he probably would have lived to his 90s or possibly 100.
Yeah.
That was something that was said. And that's echoed by Grandma's mother, who died at 96. And, well, anyone knows my current grandma's 97 and her sister's 95, not far behind her.
Yeah. A lot of these people were old before they were in the World War II. I met a lot of the veterans, even people like Charles Upham and that. And I sort of seem to remember them in a bit of a different way, that they were old before their time. I think. Yeah. I don't know the facts around what Nicole's talking there, but she said she only had one grandfather. Remember that some of the people that went off and did the right thing and went to war were already parents. I never met either of my grandfathers.
Yeah. And I mean, considering
one of them died in 43, and the other one died in 1975. I've never met them because my parents came out here. So there's that separation of countries and all that sort of thing, and I'm sure many New Zealanders have been through that too.
Yeah, I mean, that and actually, going on that basis, my grandma was damn lucky to have her father come back, considering, that was... He was her caregiver, her primary parent, my great-grandfather. And so grandma would have been having all of this, because this was at the same point. So my grandma was never eligible to serve in war, because she was 2 years younger than our former Queen Elizabeth II. Her husband, granddad, did serve in the war as an ambulance officer in New Caledonia. And he voluntarily enlisted, but he would have only been 20 when he enlisted, if that. Because he enlisted in there, and I mean, as a result, he went to Teachers Training College, met my grandma, who went to Teachers Training College not long after finishing secondary school, and that's where my grandparents met, and then went on both to go for that. And one of the things that a lot of World War II veterans who decided to go into teaching as a profession afterwards, they were headhunted to become school principals. And I actually found out one of the people who's a friend of mine in Wellington, I found out his grandfather, found this out yesterday from his mum, went to Teachers Training College and served alongside, was trained next to Granddad while They were both at Teachers Training College in 47 and 48. And she always remembers, oh, that's Mr. Prankin's house there, being the one at the Manukau Primary School, as they used to drive through and live in, because her father was the deputy principal of Horowhenua College. And it's just interesting, the whole thing there. But she didn't know that my grandma later took the principal reins after Granddad retired. So it's interesting how both of them got there, but got to the top job in different ways. But there was a lot of World War II service people, young people, who, if there wasn't a war, would have, if they ended up at Teachers Training College, would have ended up there 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
Ended up at a later point. And 1947 was the biggest age variation of trainee teachers in New Zealand's Teachers College history at that point in time.
Wow, that's, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's quite
right. Yeah, the guys that were away and then came back.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
How it goes,
It's interesting. On Anzac morning, I was talking to about 6 young soldiers. And I asked, having a son myself, who's 25, I asked these guys their ages, and 18, 19, and I always think back to something about 30 years ago when I met a World War II veteran that had been part of Bomber Command. And I went down to his house in Island Bay. He asked me to come over and see him, and I did. And he showed me a picture of a Lancaster bomber. And in that photo, and it's extraordinary, there's 140 young men. And then he told me something that stunned me, and that was that the oldest guy in the photograph, sitting on the wings of the planes and in the front, was 21 years old. And I was thinking about that story, and I told those young guys yesterday, and I just wonder if we had the same, we'll never have the same circumstances again, hopefully, but what would the young people of today do? What would they do? How would they respond? What would be the aftermath of them being involved in conflict? Conflict is not a nice thing.
No.
Those MPs, I'd be surprised if anyone said anything different. There's no winners, mate. No mistake about it.
Yeah. Okay.